A cowardly boy decides to face his fear of the dark and enlists the help of a girl from the future to gather all the entities of the night in order to save the planet. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Orion in the Dark, from 2024. To the people around him, Orion is an ordinary teenager who doesn't interact much with others because of his shyness. However, the truth is that the boy is tormented by various fears and avoids socializing with his peers because he is afraid of being rejected. One of the ways Orion deals with his problems is to document them in his notebook. Among his biggest nightmares are the fear of the school toilet clogging up and flooding everything, the fear of answering his teacher's questions wrong, the fear of clowns coming out of the sewer, the fear of being infected by a mosquito bite, and even the fear of dogs. His huge list of unfounded fears prevents Orion from having the best experiences of his life and, at school, his biggest fear is one day having to face a bully called Richie Panici. Every day, Orion meets the boy in the locker room and has never had the courage to confront him, not least because one of his greatest fears is sinking his fist into Richie's nose and ending up in juvie. That Friday, Ms. Spinoza informs the students that on Monday they will have a school trip to the planetarium, which sends Orion into a panic. The boy can't stop thinking that an accident will happen during this outing and, in all his guesses of what might happen, he ends up lifeless or humiliated by his classmates. Then, instead of handing in the permission slip signed by his parents, Orion tells the teacher that they didn't let him go and misses the chance to sit next to Sally, the girl he likes, on the bus during the tour. The truth is that Orion is terrified at the thought of his perishment, because he has come to the conclusion that, after dying, all people cease to exist and he doesn't want to go through that. After eating his dinner and watching TV with his parents, Orion goes to his room and has to face his greatest fear, the dark. Due to his dread of the dark, every night the boy sleeps with the lights on, but when a storm knocks out the power to the whole neighborhood, Orion has to face the monsters that terrify him. In the early hours of the morning, the youngster is visited by Dark, and the dark monster says that of all the children who are afraid of him, Orion is by far the most troublesome. Despite not being seen in a good light by most people, Dark is not evil and is saddened to know that everyone treats him as a villain. Upon hearing this, Orion realizes that the creature isn't as scary as he thought and says that his biggest dream is to stop being so fearful. Determined to help the boy get rid of his fears, Dark invites him to accompany him for a night and claims that, after that, Orion will learn to appreciate the beauty that lies in darkness. However, fear prevents the boy from accepting this invitation, so Dark leaves. However, remembering all the opportunities he missed out on because of fear, Orion decides to confront him and Dark returns to get the boy. At this point in the story, Hypatia interrupts her father and claims to know what he's doing. She says that Orion is telling her this fictitious story from when he was a child to help her overcome her fear of the dark, but assures him that this strategy won't work. After making this observation, the young woman asks her father to continue the story, and Orion describes the sensation of flying through the sky with Dark spreading darkness all over the planet. Although he is living a unique experience, Orion is unable to contemplate the beauty of the night because he is too afraid of falling and can't pay attention to anything else. Due to his fear of sharks and fireworks, the boy is unable to enjoy himself and, while covering his eyes to protect his retinas from the lights produced by the fireworks, he ends up falling. Even after being rescued, the young man is still terrified and asks Dark to take him back home. However, the entity reveals that it won't be able to do so until the next cycle of the night, in other words, 24 hours from now. So Orion has no choice but to travel with Dark, as he knows he won't be able to return home alone. On the other side of the planet, light appears and brightens the day with its radiant light. While the next cycle doesn't arrive, Dark takes Orion to meet the other entities of the night: sleep, quiet, insomnia, noises, and dreams. However, upon seeing the fearful boy in his hideout, these entities become furious and accuse Dark of having brought Orion there just to prove to himself that he's not as evil as the humans say. Furious, Dreams orders the boy to find his way back home, but Dark manages to convince her to allow Orion to accompany them only that night, and the boy has the opportunity to see Sleep at work up close. This is the entity responsible for ensuring that everyone sleeps at night, but Orion is terrified to discover the means it uses to do so. He then follows Insomnia's work and discovers that it is he who keeps whispering intrusive thoughts into people's ears during the night, with the aim of preventing them from falling asleep. Quiet's job is exactly the opposite, as she removes any kind of sound from the environment, even those coming from human minds. Meanwhile, Noises roams the city scaring children with his unexplained noises, which makes Orion angry because he knows how terrifying these noises that appear in the middle of the night are. Finally, it's time to follow the work of dreams, and the young man sees the entity rummaging through Irene's subconscious before creating a beautiful personalized dream for her. However, while watching dreams at work, Orion remembers a nightmare he had the week before and transports Irene to the same frightening scenario he experienced. Then a giant version of Richie Panici appears and starts chasing the boy. After trapping the entities of the night in a locker, Richie captures Orion and tries to drown him in the toilet. Just then, a jet of water hits the bully in the face and Orion manages to escape. He then creates a door that sucks everything around him inside, including Richie's body. Just as Orion was about to be dragged into the black hole he himself created, Dark manages to break free and rescues the boy. After leaving Irene's mind, Dreams blames the boy for what happened and Orion is saddened to realize that he still hasn't managed to overcome his fears. However, Dark reminds the boy that he is no longer afraid of the dark and says that this is already a great achievement. From that moment on, Orion decides to grasp the unique experience he is living with all his might and puts his fears aside in order to enjoy every second of it. Instead of getting in the way of the entities, the boy decides to help sleep put people to sleep and then shows Insomnia how to insert the worst thoughts related to existential crises into the minds of humans. His fear of sharks no longer prevents Orion from enjoying the beauty of the ocean at night and he discovers that it's fun to scare people with unexplained noises. After making amends with Dreams for a previous dream that turned into a nightmare, the boy helps her produce good dreams. Soon after, he accompanies Quiet on his mission to spread the silence of the night so that humans can sleep in peace. After a few intense hours of work, the group decides to take a break and Orion feels bad when he notices Dark's frustration, because no matter what the entity does, it is still hated by the children. At that moment, Dark confesses that he is also afraid and fears that everyone is right about him. Despite knowing that he's never hurt anyone, the monster wonders if people are right about him being scary and Orion says that Dark is one of the nicest guys he's ever met. At the end of the break, the entities gather to get back to work and Dark sees his greatest enemy approaching on the horizon. When he sees Light, Orion feels sympathy for him and, for some reason that he can't explain, he is happy to see that entity. Dark knows that if he is reached by Light, he will cease to exist, so before his enemy gets too close, he has to leave and take his friends with him. Before Orion can continue his story, Hypatia asks him to accompany her on a walk, as she wants to go out at night just as Orion did when he was a child. Gradually, the young girl finds the courage to face her fear of the dark, but when she and her father come across an unlit alleyway, they are both paralyzed and decide to take another route. As they cross the street on an avenue full of lights, Hypatia pauses to write a few lines of a poem and asks why her father is still afraid of the dark. Then Orion continues to tell his daughter the story. After escaping from Light, the group arrives at a cabin in the middle of the forest and the boy realizes that he is still afraid of going into completely dark places. So Noise decides to light a fire for him and everyone is amazed to realize that the landscapes are much more beautiful in the presence of light. When he hears Orion saying that he likes the light more than the dark, Dark is disappointed and feels betrayed, as he thinks the boy is trying to make the other entities turn against him. When he realizes that his comments have upset his friend, Orion decides to make a speech in front of everyone to apologize, but ends up making his preference for daylight even more obvious. Since they have never had the chance to see the world during the day, the entities of the night decide to abandon Dark and await Light's arrival to ask him for a job. At that moment, Dark feels betrayed by his own friends and begs them not to leave him alone in his work of bringing night to the world. However, the group refuses to accompany him and Dark decides to leave. Frustrated, he thanks his team for spending all this time with him and continues on his way in the company of Orion. As he flies over the rest of the planet alone, Dark becomes so sad that he no longer sees any point in continuing his journey, because he doesn't want to work alone for eternity. So he decides to sit on the shell of a flying turtle and await the arrival of his enemy, because when Light arrives, he will disappear forever. When he sees daylight approaching, Orion despairs and begs his friend to leave. However, Dark remains where he is and disappears the moment he is touched by the sunlight. After Dark's perishment, Orion runs out of ideas and decides to finish his story, but Hypatia refuses to accept this ending and begs her father to continue telling her what happened. They are in the planetarium where Orion works and, without knowing how his own story ends, the man turns on the device that produces a hologram on the ceiling and explains how the constellations came to be. Seeing all those stars, Hypatia feels bad that she doesn't have the chance to see the sky for real, because all those city lights obscure the brightness of the stars. The young woman sees no point in building a city with giant buildings that cover the sky and creating a machine to artificially reproduce the image of the stars inside a closed environment. Despite working there, Orion agrees with his daughter's logical reasoning and the young woman claims to have thought of a perfect ending to her father's story. While young Orion is floating on the shell of a giant turtle, Hypatia appears to him and introduces herself. Upon hearing the girl's name, Orion finds it interesting that she has the same name as the Greek astronomer who lived in the year 415 after Christ and asks where they are. After arriving at the beach, the pair realize that they have ended up in a European country, and Hypatia tells them that she has been following the boy's story. Now that dark is gone, people will no longer have a night, so they won't be able to sleep properly. If this happens, the whole of humanity will go mad and, to prevent this from happening, Hypatia reveals that she has an idea to bring back the entities of the night. The young woman then begins to read the poem she has written and, meanwhile, Dark's friends wander the earth and observe the catastrophic consequences that the absence of Dark has caused. Suddenly, people hate sunlight and Light's confidence is shaken when he sees humans using curtains to try to get rid of him. Hearing Hypatia recite her poem about how much she misses the dark, the creatures of the night are drawn to her and decide to join forces to bring Dark back. To do this, Dreams must enter Orion's memories and rescue his departed friend. In an attempt to help the boy sleep comfortably, Sleep hands him a pillow and, realizing that Orion is feeling insecure, Hypatia says she will be there to help him. Quiet then removes all the surrounding noise and Sleep immediately snuffs out the boy with his magic sheep. While Orion sleeps, Dreams takes Hypatia into his subconscious and, once there, the entity searches his deepest fears until she finds the night the boy met Dark. At first, Orion is terrified, but when his friend turns up, he feels relieved and tells him that he's come to get him. Just as they are about to embrace, the cupboard door opens and Dark is sucked inside. The same goes for Orion, who is desperately trying to hold on while he thinks of a way to bring his friend back. As the boy clings to the door, his deepest fears bubble up from the pages of his notebook and come to life to torment him. Just as he is about to be sucked into the black hole, Hypatia appears and manages to hold him back. Dreams then informs him that the vortex is a creation of Orion's mind and only he can stop it. According to Hypatia, the only way the boy can save Dark is by going into the closet and pulling the entity back out. Despite his fear of not being able to return to the surface, Orion decides to enter the black hole and face his fear once and for all. At this point, Dreams asks him to tie a rope around his waist and the boy dives down to reach Dark. After grabbing the rope, the entity tries to climb to the surface, but the fabric begins to tear, so Dreams decides to leave the dream and asks her colleagues for help in waking Orion. If he perishes during the dream, the boy will also perish in real life, so Insomnia and the others need to think of a strategy to wake him up. When the rope breaks in half, the two friends fall back into the black hole and are about to be eliminated for all eternity. However, before they could lose their lives, the entities in the night managed to wake Orion and, as soon as the boy awoke, Dark returned, bringing the dark back to the planet. At that moment, Orion and the entities of the night can finally contemplate the stars and the luminous insects that need darkness to show all their beauty to the world. After several hours of uninterrupted light, the crabs can finally emerge from their hiding places in the sand and head out to sea. When he sees Dark approaching, Light is happy to see the return of his rival and continues his journey to make way for darkness. With the help of his friends, Dark brings night to every country in the world and humans are relieved to know that they will no longer have to live with sunlight 24 hours a day. After carrying out their work, the entities of the night bid farewell to Orion and Hypatia and thank them for helping to bring back the Dark. Dark then takes the boy home and says that he will visit him every night. Although he doesn't appear in that form, Orion will still be able to see him and contemplate the beauty that can only be appreciated at night. After everything he experienced that weekend, the boy decides to go on the school trip and promises himself that, from now on, he will have more courage to face his fears. That evening, the two friends hug goodbye and Hypatia says she is very happy to have had the chance to meet them. Before leaving, Dark says that the girl has a great father and it's only then that Orion discovers that the girl is actually his daughter. The girl explains that she has come from the future to help him and advises Orion not to worry so much about things, because everything will work out in the end. After arriving home, Orion wakes up his parents and asks for their help to take Hypatia back home, but the young woman lives in Manhattan and they are in New York. Terrified, the two young people begin to think of a strategy to send her back to the future and suddenly a boy called Tycho appears at the window. The boy reveals that he has parked his time machine in the backyard and says he can take Hypatia home. During the journey, Tycho accidentally unleashed some time monsters and must stop them before they multiply and destroy history. So, after saying goodbye to her father, Hypatia follows the boy and, after eliminating the monsters, they run straight to the time capsule. Minutes later, the young woman arrives home to find her father, but one of the time monsters has followed her and appears in her room. Before the creature could attack them, Tycho eliminated it and then said goodbye to his grandfather and his future mother. 20 years later, Hypatia tells the same story to her son and lets him decide the ending. After putting Tycho to sleep, the woman says goodbye to her parents, who are passing through and will return to the city the next morning. In the end, Orion's effort to go to the planetarium paid off, as he and Sally got married and built a beautiful family together. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.